My name is William Henry. I'm an author, lecturer, and tour guide. I'm a researcher at heart, and I found when I was first starting writing in the mid-90s that people weren't looking at some of the same things that I was looking at, and I was making notes and decided, okay, it's time to start putting this into a book form, and it became a service. So it's always on to the next really exciting subject. One thing always leads to another, and that's what drives me. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. I was born and raised in Detroit, and then we moved to the suburbs in 1967. And this is when I started playing sports, and I was always reading. I loved reading sports books. My mother was ill for most of my childhood, and my father worked at home as a lawyer, and he was kind of a maverick lawyer. He didn't work with ordinary people. It was always PhDs. These were people, one guy was trying to mine gold from seawater. Another guy was making these micro bubbles that could clean the world's oceans. My father's best friend was Gibson Guitar's master luthier, and he was trying to build the world's perfect classical guitar. And so everything my father was involved in were people on the edge. And it was a constant parade through our home of all of these people that are always working on these incredible ideas. And I was serving them coffee. And so I would listen in on the conversations, and that was actually my first introduction to extraterrestrials too, because there was one particular guy that all of these PhDs, whenever this guy came around, it was like silence. It's like, because he was so different and so unique. I suffered from migraines when I was really young, from like second to 7th or 8th grade. And this man, who was a scientist, would rub my feet and take away the migraines. And so I thought, this is a really magical guy. And I do remember them talking, he's like an alien type of a guy. They weren't rebels, but they were butting up against really big systems. The guy that was proving he could take sewage, zap it with sound or frequencies, and get clean water out the other end. They set up shop in Midland, Michigan, which is the headquarters of Chemical. And they got squashed like bugs. And I'm thinking, though, these are remarkable people that are doing remarkable things, yet how come the FBI's always involved? How come there's always some corporation that's suing them into the ground to make sure that these patents are never known to the public? And that was kind of like my first wake-up call that, hey, you know, you can have great ideas, but they're not always going to be as well received as you might like. In 1982, I had moved to Nashville to go to this small school because they had an entertainment music business program. I loved music, and I was going to be an entertainment lawyer. And it just happened that this Southern Baptist college offered an entertainment music business degree where you would be taught by professors from Music Row, industry professionals. And we were a real weird mix because chewing gum, dancing were prohibited at this school, but yet here were all of us kind of, you know, rock and rollers kind of thing, invading them. And the catch was you had to take Bible study classes. And growing up in my family in Detroit, we weren't particularly religious. I like to tell people the 4 apostles were Waylon, Willie, Chris, and Johnny. And in a sophomore sociology class, a professor assigned us to review a book whose implications would impact Christianity and write a 3-page review of this book. So off I go to the local bookstore, and I find this brand new, it was an international bestseller at this time. The book was called Holy Blood, Holy Grail. And the premise of the book was the crucifixion was a hoax. Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married. They had children. There were certain secrets that Jesus possessed that the traditional church, the Catholic Church, does not want people to know about. And I was instantly hooked. I didn't know anything about Christianity. It's like, wow, if they wanted to eliminate these people, what was it that they knew? I ended up writing a 44-page review of this book, and I was flunked. And the professor sat me down and said, you're at a Southern Baptist college. Do you believe any of this crap? I'm like, well, yeah, I think that book really laid out a very compelling case. And he said, well, if you really believe that, then you might consider continuing your education somewhere else. And that's what I did. And I'm still trying to answer that same fundamental question. I was 19 years old, 20 years old. It was a huge wake-up call because I didn't fully appreciate the role of religion in people's lives because it wasn't a huge part of our lives. So it left me kind of bewildered. I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, I'm here to get an education. I'm asking really important questions. You would think I would be applauded for wanting to address the most important questions of Christianity right off the bat. But in fact, the response was the exact opposite. That's like, this has been decided long before your time. This stuff is nonsense. We don't want to hear it. So my plan was to get this entertainment music business degree and go work on Music Row in Nashville or maybe Hollywood, something like that. But I only lasted 2 years at the college. And that was the end of that story. When I first tapped into these mysteries, it was kind of a lonely road. My sisters were into it. My family was into it. Thanksgiving conversation at our house was always about this type, the mysteries or conspiracy theory. But my friends didn't get it at all. So it became kind of a lonely road. It was a little scary, but I think I had this entrepreneurial spirit from my father that you could make something happen. You could build a business or you could make connections and contacts and do it yourself. And that really became kind of the rule of my life. I worked for a self-help entrepreneur who made hundreds of millions of dollars selling subliminal tapes on late night TV. How to lose weight, how to quit smoking, and he was very famous. And he appreciated that I liked to do research, and he had a book deal. And he hired me to read books for him. And I did this for almost 3 years. And so every month he would call with a question. How does the brain work? Why do people fail? How do people lose weight? And it'd be hysterical. My parents would be like, oh God, what's the question this month, you know? And that was a wonderful experience for me. I mean, he just gave me free rein to go out and explore. And it was then I started to I got off the reservation a little bit because I started to put my own input into it, my own perspective. And of course, that wasn't suiting him because he really wanted it to be about his story. But that kind of put me into a whole new area. It's like, okay, I really enjoy the writing. And then I read Zecharia Sitchin's books and about the ancient Anunnaki and Sumerian mythology, about the extraterrestrial intervention in human affairs, and decided this is what I really, really want to get into. This whole question of extraterrestrials, especially in the ancient past. First question that really drove my research was, who is Jesus really? And what did Jesus actually teach? Not what the Bible says he taught. This is a 4th century Coptic Christian depiction of Jesus with his rod and his ring. His 2 key pieces of technology that were then taken out of his hands, and he's just simply shown waving his hand, performing his miracles. But in example after example of early Christian art, he had this rod and ring in his hand. As I look at ancient astronaut theory as proposed by Eric von Däniken, Zecharia Sitchin, and other authors, I love their work, but something that I find I have a slightly different perspective on it, and that is that there's a very definite dependence that some have on the belief that the gods were flesh and blood beings, and they had super advanced technology. And that could well be true. But as I dug deeper and deeper into the subject, I found it a more compelling argument that these extraterrestrials are not in flesh and blood form. They can take on flesh and blood form, and that their primary motivation for coming here is not to give us technology. It's rather to assist us in activating the latent capabilities of our body, to transform, to become like the gods. And that is a completely different path. If you're looking at these ancient stories of extraterrestrials for the big wow of, wow, look at the size of that flying saucer, or what technology did they have, your chances are not looking to apply it to your own personal life. You're not looking for the ultimate secrets of how we transform. And that's what started to really drive my research into the extraterrestrial phenomena, is how they came here to assist us in our personal and spiritual evolution, not just a technological evolution.